So I'm Angela May. I'm a white woman with brown hair. Behind me are books and several works of art on the wall.
I'm Sean Pathasema, a man of European and Southeast Asian descent with black hair. Behind me, there are several works of art on the wall.
And before we begin, we would just like to begin with the land acknowledgement and that the Birmingham Museum of Art is located on the traditional lands of the Muskogee Creek. So in this session, we cover the benefits of asynchronous digital resources, and we'll demonstrate how converting our in-gallery digital interpretation into teacher resources is beneficial. So feel free to post questions and comments in the chat, and then at the end of the session, we'll have a poll and begin Q&A. So the BMA, we're just really excited about our recent launch of Culture Bridge, eLearning across Asia, which is our e-learning platform. And although we did have to accelerate its release due to the pandemic, it has so far been a success. It provides a digital mix and match teaching units and games that connect multiple museum platforms. It also has Google Classroom integration, and then multiple resource types, videos, quizzes, quick guides, art activities, STEAM plans, digital puzzles, Bitmoji classrooms and meditation studios, and interactive images, which we'll be focusing on today. But before we look at the website and discuss our tactics for in-gallery interactive conversion, it is a good time to cover the 5 benefits of asynchronous digital resources that we've sort of discovered through Culture Bridge. So 1, dependability. Educators really need consistency for their classrooms. And sometimes museums, we like to switch things up and put things on or off view. So digital resources ensure that educators can use the same resources year after year in their lesson plans. And of course, not to mention that works can be removed from a gallery, but online, the educator always has access to the object and its material, which also increases collection accessibility as well. So another benefit is confidence. Educators need to feel confident in the validity of the resource as well as their ability to teach the material. So digital museum resources provide that 24/7 access to vetted materials. And also digital resources are simply just a medium that young learners are familiar with, and they now expect to receive information this way. And bonus, digital material is super easy to update as new scholarship or information changes. So you're not spending a lot of time or money reprinting something once new scholarship comes about. So number 3 is impact. Digital materials can be shared beyond the institution's region, increasing the museum's reach and impact. Through analytics, we know Culture Bridge's greatest impact is in our state, Alabama, but resources are being accessed in every US state except for North Dakota. What's up with that, North Dakota? Too cool for Culture Bridge? But also resources are being accessed across the globe. And that's really exciting to see how far your institution impact can reach, especially with Culture Bridge only being open for 1 year. Number 4 is allure. So I know that there's this ongoing fear that the more you build online, the less people may visit your actual institution. But I think we've really all kind of come to the same idea that online material is an enticement, and it fuels desire to finally see that specific object in person. And number 5, which is my favorite, is boundless possibilities. So digital resources allow museum educators and web teams to break free from the confines of the gallery and create an entirely new model for museum learning and engagement. What? So we're going to look at some of these ways that we can create new models. So interactives, we're going to get to our interactive conversion, and we're going to look at some of our in-gallery interactives to talk about how we moved them to an asynchronous resource. Our in-gallery digital interpretation and engagement, that's our smart guide, which you see right here, and that's our digital guide through the galleries. And we also have Smart Guide Plus, which are interactive images and interactive storytelling. So they're designed to work in tandem with specific objects displayed in the galleries. So it is a self-guided experience, but it's dependent on being, the visitor or early learner being at the museum. But we found that these interactive experiences had value outside of the galleries. That was especially when teachers said things like, sure wish I had this in my classroom. And is this available online? So we really knew we were on the right track and moving towards something that we think educators really needed. And so for us at the BMA, creativity begins when you stop using something the way it was intended and create something new. And before the conversion to asynchronous resources, we were already experimenting with ways to evolve digital engagement in the galleries. And that's like using the smart guide to turn the galleries into a video game, where the galleries became the game landscape, the visitor became the player, and the smart guide became the controller. And this level of engagement alerted educators to non-boring interpretation at the BMA. And what I mean by that is that we value providing multiple pathways to connecting to art. And so while some visitors want to learn more about a work, others are just looking for an experience where art plays a role but is not being objective. Another experiment was using Smart Guide Plus for object repatriation. So a couple of years ago, we repatriated our Shiva Linga back to India, back to Tamil Nadu. And we made an interactive celebrating the absence of the object and focusing on ethical museum practice by placing an interactive in front of the empty object niche. So here we have the interactive and it's standing before the niche where that object used to be exhibited. It is still one of our most touched interactives of all time. So even though this interactive is down and we now have a new object in there, and that's been a couple of years, it's still one of our top interactives, letting us know an actual art object in a physical gallery is becoming less and less relevant. And also just to state that the more digital interpretation we build around repatriation, the more we normalize it and create an environment where the life of an object doesn't end once it leaves your gallery. I think that's important to note. So let's take a look at how interactive resources have evolved on our eLearning website, Culture Bridge. Digital interpretation engagement can be really expensive. So we took those same principles of creativity, engagement, repurposing, to incorporate technology that we were already using in our galleries, like the Smart Guide, like Smart Guide Plus interactives, and we use that to enhance Culture Bridge, but also save some money at the same time. So it allowed educators to use interactives in the classroom, which we know was something that they wanted to do. It allowed educators to assign interactives as homework, and that's why we built the Google Classroom integration. And then also just enables educators and learners to take their time and practice slow-looking techniques, since they're not having to compete for a good view in the galleries. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate to the website to show a few interactives before we move over to polls and Q&A. Feel free to access the website via the QR code, and I'm about to link over right now. So hopefully everybody can see this on their screen. This is the Culture Bridge landing page. I'm going to go to our resource directory. And, specific to today's talk, I'm going to go to our interactive images section, because we have a few different types of interactives. We have iconography focused interactives, detailed imagery focused interactives, and then we have Bitmoji classrooms and meditation studios. I'm going to start with how to identify the Buddha. It's a Buddha from Gandhara. And this interactive links to our smart guide. So we're linking our two platforms. But this type of iconography focused interactive allows students to explore an image in a non-linear fashion. So touching on areas that interest them most about an object. And I'm sure at this point, we're all familiar with interactive images. We've either encountered them or we have them at our own institution. We make our interactives in-house. But for teachers, having different levels of interactives helps them when they're making their own lesson plans, what they want to assign for homework. So we used the functionality of the Smart Guide to host the interactives on Culture Bridge. So when you click on it, it actually links to the Smart Guide platform to explore it, and that gives double the site visits. And if you're a nonprofit like we are, and it's a numbers game when it comes down to funding and metrics, the analytics you document from digital contribute to those grant proposals. So being able to link multiple platforms was something very beneficial for us. So I'm going to click on the Tale of Genji T-Screens. This is a detailed focus interactive. Again, I'm going to link over. And if you see at the bottom of this screen, we also have related resources so that you can build these mix and match teaching units on an object. And then this is our Google Share Classroom button. So let's link over. And so these T-screens are really, really small, and they have illustrations from the chapters of the Tale of Genji on the panels. But they're way too small to see in person. These screens are exhibited behind glass with really low lighting to protect the images. So these interactives not only provides the chapter titles and a brief synopsis of the chapter, but allows learners to see the illustrations, which you could never, ever be able to see these details in the gallery. It just would not work. So this has been incredibly successful for us. And because educators let us know that they were using these interactives in the galleries, that's why they asked for the Google Classroom Share button. And that coding is free from Google. So if you want to have your own integration, they provide the coding to do so. Very helpful. And so last, before we move to Q&A, I want to touch on our Bitmoji classrooms. They kind of combine multiple levels of what we are trying to accomplish by combining resources, combining different platforms, and also matching, again, what students started to learn during the pandemic. So we saw many educators creating Bitmoji classrooms during the swift turnover during the pandemic. And we wanted to make some of our own Bitmoji rooms and classrooms and meditation studios to support local educators and to build on something that students were swiftly becoming familiar with. So there are several benefits for Bitmoji or from Bitmoji classrooms. One is that they're built on Google Slides, which is really inexpensive, and you can get any imagery that you need for free. So if budget is an issue. And then one of the best benefits of the Bitmoji rooms is that you can recycle old interpretation, lesson plans, articles that were made around an object. It really gives new life to interpretation that may have been removed. So in a Bitmoji classroom, because it's interactive, if you click on the laptop, you're going to go to a video specifically about, in this case, Ganesh, with our 5 W's of art videos that are object-centric videos designed for really K through 6th grade, but we've found out that they're using them in college level classes as well. After the video, you can take a quiz immediately on a work of art. And then below that, we have in-classroom activities that also work for distance learning. And these presentations are built on the platform. A teacher can use them to guide students, or they can be downloaded as worksheets. And again, we have related resources on the bottom, always aligning that there are multiple ways that you can create a teaching unit around any single object in the collection. So again, it just links to multiple resources like coloring outside the lines. If you go to the pin board and click on it, it's actually going to lead back to our smart guide, specifically to interpretation that is built for in-gallery use. And again, it's just another way to get those multiple hits, get those multiple metrics. And through analytics, we can gauge who's using what, how much time we're using it, and that informs what we make for the next resources. And so again, just multiple links for Google Classroom, lesson plans, you name it. So Bitmoji has been incredibly popular. We're in the middle of making more. And again, the platform is Google Slides, and in the Q&A, we can discuss how we build out Google Slides and other interactives. But I think timing wise, now that we're at 12:30, and it's been about a 15-minute presentation, I'm gonna kick it over to Sean. Again, that's the end of this portion. These are our emails. I'm gonna pull this screen back up at the end of our Q&A and poll session, but Sean's going to take over for polls as we start kind of gleaning what the audience is looking for. So Sean, let me know when you're ready to go to the first question, and if we can launch the first poll as well.
Yeah, we can go ahead and do the first question, which is securing funding for digital education programs difficult at your institution? And it's a simple yes or no.
Mm-hmm. And we'll give people some time.
Looks like overwhelmingly yes, which is not surprising considering museum budgets and everything. So now we can go to the second question. What budget range do your educational initiatives fall into? We have A, 1,000 to 10,000, B, 10,000 to 50,000, C, 50,000 to 100,000, D, 100,000 to 300,000, and finally 300,000 plus. All right, so we got a 50-50 split between 1,000 to 10 and 10,000 to 50,000. And on to question 3. What, if any, types of gallery interpretation do you employ at your institution? And you can choose as many as you'd like for this question. So audio guide, smartphone guide, small scale interactives, major immersive interactive experiences, or none at all. This one's a little more varied. Looks like audio guides and small scale interactives are the top 2 categories. I would say this kind of lines up to where we came to these projects from. One of the reasons why Smart Guide and Culture Bridge are all web-based. Really everything we do, we try to keep built that way. That way we can kind of port it from one platform to another. There was one question in the chat. Can you link us to the platforms you used for these? That was when Angie was talking about the Bitmoji classroom. Is that specifically? Jessica had asked this, what you were thinking of, or were you asking of the platforms that we use? So Culture Bridge and Smart Guide.
I was referring to the Bitmoji classroom because that's new to me, but I'm also interested in the other platforms that you're using, if there's API integration and whatnot behind Culture Bridge itself.
Okay, I'll start with our platforms. So Culture Bridge, we developed in-house. It's built on WordPress. So we don't have an API integration. We do have Smart Guide up as open source. It's on GitHub. We haven't updated that in a bit because the chaos of the pandemic. But currently, yeah, there's really no way to kind of hook into what we've built otherwise.
I can end the stop share and then pull up the Google Slide platform. But if you have Google Suite, so Gmail, Google Docs, anything like that, then you can build a Bitmoji classroom on a Google Slide. You could also build a Bitmoji classroom really on with PowerPoint, anything like that that has slide presentation software, Canva, if you embed the links into the images that you use. We use Google Slides to build our Bitmoji classrooms, mainly because it's easier to embed the slide onto a web page without it trying to move to different slides. Sean had to figure that out. That was beyond my brain, but I can build the slides and build a Bitmoji classroom, and then you just click on each item. I had backup slides just in case our internet went down. So if you're building out a Google slide, each one of these are just like a background color, a background floor that I integrated in. And then every single one of these is just something I copied and pasted in, then embedded the URL for whatever resource link it was. And so they're pretty time consuming to build, but they work really well. So I recommend if you just literally type in Google Slides, Google's going to take you straight to that platform. There's a few how-to videos online, but once you get started, you kind of figure out what works. And I like to, because I'm a total snoop, I like to see the analytics on these. The videos get clicked the most, and then coloring sheets, things like that. And even the little Bitmoji person, little Bitmoji Angie over here, it has audio embedded in it, welcoming you like to the classroom. So my recommendation is Google Slides, but you can make interactive like Bitmoji rooms using any type of presentation software. I'll get off of the GIF so that too much. Let's see, are there any other questions or anyone raising their hand? Okay, Andrea?
Yeah, it's Andrea. Thanks, Angela and Sean, for this presentation. I'm curious then about how you work with exhibition developers, right, to create these resources. So can you confirm when you create a resource for Culture Hub, does it have to live on Smart Guide, or are you creating resources outside of that system?
Sean, do you want to, or you want me to go for it?
You could start with this one.
Sure. So that's a good question. And because this is built outside right now of exhibitions, everything's focused on permanent gallery or permanent gallery objects that are in our collection. we have a lot more freedom and don't need as much, I guess, permission and for the rights to do these. And so if we create it on Culture Bridge, on the website itself, it's also built in-house, no permissions are needed. And all of these objects for the most part are from antiquity. We do work with the curator. When we started Culture Bridge, our curator of Asian art had retired and we didn't have a curator for 2 years, but my background's in Asian art, so we moved forward with the project. Now that we have a curator, we do try to leverage their knowledge and make sure we're not about to put something online that shouldn't go online, or that's so sacred that we would devalue the object or the experience. In terms of linking what goes on Smart Guide, what goes on Smart Guide Plus, and what goes on Culture Bridge, you do have to have the most permission to go on Culture Bridge since the impact is farther and it can be used international in anywhere. If you're using something in gallery like Smart Guide Plus, you have limited permission because it never leaves the confines of the museum gallery. But I may have taken your question in a different direction, Andrea. So if I didn't answer it, let me know. And if it was like a more tech side question.
No, that you answered it. I was just curious about like who comes together to create this resource, right? Like, does it have to live on Smart Guide in order to appear on Culture Bridge? But I think I understand the flow now. So then,
Right.
yeah, as a follow-up question to that, then I'm really curious about how you all are using analytics. I really like the point that you look at what people are responding to determine what you create next. Can you talk a little bit more about like what KPIs you actually use to evaluate this and maybe any trends that you saw, of course, through 2020 and anything that might have stayed the same through 2021?
Mm-hmm. I can start with this one. We do use Google Analytics. When we set up Culture Bridge, we did try to create hooks for the different types of media. So, you know, if someone's playing a video versus taking the quiz, we do try to track the level of engagement with each type of resource. It's still new, so I wouldn't, you know, we do have some trends, but again, last year was kind of a weird year. So yeah, I'm not really sure what we know quite yet.
Yeah, we've gotten, so what's interesting so far about Culture Bridge, because it did launch in the middle of a pandemic, which we did on purpose and accelerated the release to help out our educators that we know we're struggling in town, is that this website is also incredibly niche, right? It's an educator resource website, which is currently only on Asian art, which means it's only going to fit into certain grade levels, even though all of our lesson plans align with curriculum. So going through the analytics as we've been building out resources, and if I'm just going by Google Analytics and looking at the trends on Google, the top used resource varies each month, but what remains in constant upswing, the quick guides that are on the website, which are slightly more educator focused, and I'll go to that very quickly. So we found out that I built these quick guides just for like a really quick introduction for educators that maybe have a really hard time talking about the complexities of religion with K through 12. And you kind of need to know those heavy hitter points. So I made just 3 quick guides, Buddhism, Hinduism, and pronunciations, and they just kept getting hit after hit and were used and accessed multiple times early on. So I used that to build more quick guides, and we have more in the making. We just released this week, The Life of the Buddha. That's a digital comic book, but it serves as a quick guide to the life of the Buddha and Buddhism. And so analytics helped us realize, one, to make more quick guides, something very fast that a teacher can use and feel confident. Analytics also showed that, and we had a teacher committee that helped us decide what types of resources educators needed. And so they were like, videos. We want different types of videos, and we need to be able to plug and play the video in class, and then immediately have a quiz or another activity. And by far the top used videos that we have are the 5 W's of Art series, which is the who, what, when, where, and why. And so analytics started picking up our top videos, aside from 5 W's, are meditation videos. So we did some that encouraged slow looking and also calm the class. And once we did one, the analytics picked up on the videos through Google Analytics and Vimeo Analytics. So we knew we needed to continue doing meditations, which brought us to the Bitmoji rooms. Lesson plans are used and they get a lot of hits, but nothing like the videos. And then next up, which is quasi surprising, are the coloring sheets. We started with coloring sheets thinking not necessarily that it would be filler, but just that it's just something that is great to use. You learn through coloring, but they like the coloring sheets have gone crazy. So analytics helped us know that it's kind of a pivotal part of a classroom. And these coloring sheets you can download in color, or you can use, you know, a program online and color digitally. So analytics really helped a lot with that. And then just kind of guiding between, a lot of people were gearing towards the resources on Hinduism. And so I met with a teacher group, and essentially the teachers said, we don't know enough about Hinduism. We're really worried or hesitant to teach about that side in our classrooms. And this has enabled us to bring it in because the museum does the heavy lifting in this part with the quick guides and the videos. So I always say user feedback is the best feedback, but analytics is your great way to snoop. But like Sean said, everything's changing now that we're coming out of the pandemic. And I think analytics are going to change with hybrid classrooms. I can say that Culture Bridge wasn't used as much over the summer. Numbers went down, which is also not a school year. And as soon as September hit, our analytics like doubled in the amount of visits to the website, and is already starting to grow in October. Oh, we got a raised hand. Go ahead.
Is that me, I'm assuming? Hi.
Oh, sorry. I had my mouse over at Jessica. Sorry.
Well, I grew up in Birmingham, and I loved the museum. I went there all the time as a kid, so I just wanted to say that. But when I was working at the last art museum I was at, we had a lot of these conversations about like harvesting content that was developed for use in a physical space with close looking, using it on the web, harvesting audio transcripts for audio guides and using that on the web. And there was kind of, I guess it was coming from executive, but there was kind of this feeling that we should be thinking of the web as its own kind of unique thing and its own unique audience. And we really should be creating content that is specific to that, that's made for that. Now, you can't exactly do that on the cheap. So that didn't take us very far as a sort of executive top-down order. But I wonder if you think that coming out of the pandemic, you've proven that there's a return on investment in these educational resources in this digital on the web. Do you think that you would pivot to sort of say, create custom content for this platform, for this format, or will you continue to harvest the content?
Oh, we've already started creating stuff specific for this platform that will only exist on this platform, that is made just for our digital audience. And so I totally understand, like, especially where your institution's coming from, those are all the same conversations we've had. And the way that I feel, and I think we knew this before the pandemic, but the pandemic really showed it, and Sean and I have talked about this a million times, is that we have now had this opportunity to create an environment that's a completely new museum, the digital museum, and that audience is going to grow on its own. So you're going to have your in-person audience, your hybrid audience, and your digital audience. And that can only, again, greater impact, benefit you. And when you make it with intentionality, I'm intentionally making something just for the digital audience. They know that they're being cared about, and they're going to come back again and visit your site. So we are investing in it. We're gonna continue to make things specifically for this website. We're gonna start adding in other areas of art onto this website and really kind of go full throttle, because I don't think time's marching backwards. Digital, it's just happening. And you got to meet people. Even though the art in our museum is old, doesn't mean we have to use antiquated modes of interpretation. Let's see.
Yeah, and I was going to add to that. 2020 validated what we have built over the years, which I think at our institution, we came from kind of a very different place in that we were always justifying Smart Guide and, you know, web resources and all of it. So that did drastically change last year because it was our only visitorship.
Mhm.
So it's really what kept our museum and, you know, many others open.
I know we have about a little less than 10 minutes left, but yeah, I'm curious about you guys. Who else had to kind of pivot really quick during the pandemic and put something online just to ensure, like, hey, I'm an educator and my job's still valid. Please don't let me go. And also, you know, in what ways people are reaching out. I think I've never seen more creativity in such a swift moment in my life than the pandemic, and seeing like the museum hustle and people really reaching out to visitors in ways I had never even thought of. It was really inspiring. I don't know if anyone has a story to
We're not
share.
all educators.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an educator, for instance. So, and I think Andrea is still not in an educator role. So there's a number of us, I wonder, who are like maybe coming at it from systems or web or digital. And we were the conduits for everyone else's pivot. And this is a really interesting use of time, the sort of like using the COVID sort of period as a lab to experiment and take the opportunity of, you know, not having a curator barrier, I think was really smart. Just to prove the worth of these kinds of things so that you could resource them in future. But I'd be curious how many of us on this call are actually educators versus tech folks.
Yeah. Well, here, let's stop share for a second. Anyone want to raise their hand if you are not an educator? Not an educator. 1, 2, we had 3, 4. All right. Educators? So we have a few. Well, I mean, and for our institution, Sean and I from day one have worked hand in hand. It's, the web is for me everything in terms of reach. And so it seemed like a natural fit. And on the curator side, Lord have mercy. I think everyone has needs, and I like can't, for everyone I know that works in web and systems, the amount of work you guys have to juggle from every single department at a museum coming to you and saying, can this go online, or can we reformat this? Honestly, it's mind-boggling, and I don't, thank you. We can't do anything without you. Oh my gosh, we would have just gone to the wayside.
I'm happy to share an anecdote, Angel, if that's helpful. And yes, as Jessica pointed out, I am also not an educator, but think with systems. And last year, my institution, or former institution, I worked really closely with the education team, both in like, we had a resource hub very similar to Culture Bridge. So it meant like rethinking the categories, right, by which people could search, because it wasn't just like teacher, right? We added like, for example, a filter for place. Like I could use this outside or at home or like on my own to like really help like parents who might be looking at this for the first time as they go into remote learning with their kids. But the other piece of that was like really supporting virtual programs. And I am really thankful for the times that I've been able to work with educators, because it's like, oh, I can understand a system of like, this is what's technically possible. And this is a really like efficient way to run things, but a perfect system has no users. And I'm like, wait, does this actually make sense to the people who actually need to register for this program? So it was a good like reality check moment, but like working together just made both of our lives easier and the work better for it.
Sean, I think she said everything that you had to live through.
That all does sound very familiar.
Let's Let's see, we got 5 minutes left, but I could, in every way, the moment we started doing webinars and we had like virtual public programs, we were trying to have family festivals online. And Sean had to figure out some way to register people for art kits, but also someone to go online for this live portion of the event. It became this user nightmare / symphony of like, who's managing what, who's going to sit in this room with this group of people. But I love the idea that y'all pivoted to this can be done outside. This can be done. Sean had to redo our whole website to make it just resources that happened during the pandemic. And the categories you realigned with, Sean, were very similar in terms of this is something you play with, this is something you watch.
Yeah, it was. And, you know, when everything shut down, Culture Bridge was nearing completion, but not ready yet. So in an ideal world, we would have been able to just send people over to the resource site, but we kind of had to bridge the two and then speed up and see how quickly we could get it live.
Mm-hmm.
And then one thing that I thought about, I don't know if we listed the URL. The smart guide is artsbma.org/guide, if anyone wants to go directly to it.
Yeah, there's an index on it. So you can go to artsbma.org/guide and click index. And it shows everything that's up right now because objects rotate in and out of the galleries. So we have 2 minutes. So this is going to end at some point. And we also had, I sent the URL to our web manager instead of everyone. .org/guide.
Do you guys have who's the artist who's drawing your coloring sheets? Are you working with someone locally?
Yes, we're working with the illustrator Hannah Adamson. I'm going to type it in. She is amazing. She did all of the illustrations for Lena Dunham and Sashir Zamata, and she just happens to be local and worked at the BMA in our kids center for a while. She's always looking for commissions. She also did our Life of the Buddha comic book. She's incredible. She's super fun to work with. I highly recommend.
Yeah,
Hannah. She's awesome.
They look great, really fun.
Yeah, we're really happy. We needed the Hindu illustrations really bad too, the coloring sheets for that, because all of our objects have like a broken arm or they're missing something, and the illustrations help students identify what they're looking for. It's been fantastic. Okay. All right, we have 1 minute. So thank you everybody so much. Thanks for participating. I really love learning what you guys are doing and talking about. It feels good that we're all kind of